feeling good. I am feeling quite unwell, so apologies if I get a bit confused with this, because if you came to my last session where we made some wall hangings out of these circles, I did tend to get the wool wrapped up and tangled and all sorts of messes, and I'll probably do that today as well. But hopefully we'll do the same thing, and that you'll feel confident that you can have a go at this, whoever you are and whatever ability you have. The reason I wanted to do this is because people were really keen to see the weaving last session, because we used these tapestry wheels to create some wall hangings with like pom-poms and twigs and things like that and tassels. But I did have these little weaved numbers that I thought we could have a go at today. And again, I want to reiterate that although I'm an artist, I'm terrible with yarn. I'm rubbish at knitting, crocheting, anything to do with wool and string. So this is just proof that anybody can do this, and it still looks great, because I'm usually rubbish at this sort of thing. So today we're going to actually weave the circles, which is very exciting. We're going to use lots of different wool. There's a few different techniques, but generally speaking, this is really easy to do. But it looks, I mean, that looks super difficult, right? But it's not, I promise. So we'll have a go. I don't know if we'll get one completed, but at least we've got this one here that I can show you. We'll go from the beginning all the way through. I'll see how much weaving I can do, but I'll show you each section as it goes, and hopefully you can all have a go. So last week I showed you, was it last week? The week before? The last session I did. I showed you how to create the sort of weaving palette, if you will, on the wheel. I'm going to show you that again today, because if you didn't see last week, then this is the most important bit, because this is the bit that enables you to weave around the circle. So I've got a few extra ones here. So what's going to happen is I'm going to have a million different things on this area here, and then they're all going to get in my way. That's basically what happens most of the time. You're all used to it. So I'm going to try and move things out of the way. So we'll move these out of the way. And what I've got here is a couple of spare tapestry wheels. Now, if you don't know what tapestry wheels are, they're basically a circular piece of wood. They usually come in two pieces. So this is probably the inside bit of this. And the idea is that you would put canvas inside it so that you can do embroidery in it. They're super, super cheap. You can get them from most craft shops fairly cheaply. I think sometimes you can get them in like pound shops, and they're like maybe £1 or £2, and you can get them in a million different sizes. So really, it's up to you how big you want to go, how small you want to go, what you want to try. But that's really, apart from the yarn, which I will talk about, this is kind of the only thing you need to buy if you don't have access to any. If you are using somebody else's, I said this last time, if you are using somebody else's, tapestry wheels are kind of to use over and over again. In this instance, it's not. This is a one-shot deal. We can't take the wood away at the end of this. It's part of it. So if someone offers to let you use theirs, you must explain to them that they're never getting it back, unless, of course, you're giving the weaving to them as a gift. So it will often come, well, all tapestry wheels will come as two wheels. So you basically get two weavings out of them, which is great. And it doesn't matter which one you use. It's just that one of them will have this little screw on the top, which you can quite easily wrap up with the wool at any point. So the first thing that you need to do, well, either the first or second is entirely up to you. I was thinking about this before and which way I should tell you how to do this. And I think the answer is whatever you feel best. So we're going to create this sort of this pattern here to weave into, but you also want the wheel to be wrapped as well, right? So you've got two options. Both have advantages and disadvantages, so take it as you will. The easiest way of doing this is by wrapping wool around the entire tapestry wheel and then doing your sort of spiderweb shape afterwards. The disadvantage to this is that you might see, if this yarn isn't the same colour as this yarn, then you're ever so slightly going to see the yarn sections. Now, I think this is less of a disadvantage as your second option. Your second option is you do your spider web first and then you wrap the wool afterwards. The problem with that is you have to sort of work around all these segments, which is a little bit fiddly, but also you will get to cover these bits. So it depends how you're feeling, depends how much time you have, depends how much dexterity you've got in your fingers. I've got terrible dexterity in my fingers at the minute. I think it's the cold. So this is quite challenging, but also probably quite good for your fingers to get them moving, right? So I'm going to go with option A, which is just to wrap around. And I'm not going to show you all of it because it's fairly self-explanatory. But I'm just going to grab whatever yarn. So let's go with this one. And essentially all you would do is tie. Now, depending on the size of your wheel will also dictate how much of wool you want to use. If you've got quite a small wheel and a massive ball of wool, then you might want to cut off some of these into little loops like this first. But this tapestry wheel does fit a nice big ball of wool through it quite easily. So it's just a case of very tightly wrapping and quite neatly around and around. Now, last time I did this, I got, look, I've already got tangled, you see. I got tangled and gave up. This time I will not. But you will be able to see that I'm trying very hard to neatly. And I mean, if it isn't neat, that's fine. You could always go back over it. It doesn't matter how many times you go over it. It's just adding colour to the wheel. You don't have to add to it at all if you don't want to. On this piece, I've not done it at all. So this is just a sort of test piece where I've been trying asymmetry, which I'll talk about later. But this one I haven't covered at all. So it's entirely up to you. But hopefully that bit is fairly easy for you to grasp, and you can kind of you can see what I'm doing, mainly because I've not got too tangled up and I'm not furious with the wool and I've not thrown it against a wall. I won't do that, I promise. Now, the other option is that you could do a myriad of colours if you so wish. So you don't have to stick to just that colour. You could do all the colours. All it would mean is that you'd need to, let me get my scissors, is chop it there, and then you want to tie it. So if you go all the way around, it's fairly easy because you can tie it off at the end here. If you're going into another colour, so you've got this strand now, so what you'd need to do is either tie this to your next piece of wool, or alternatively you could try, if you've got enough, to sort of wrap it back in the opposite direction and tie it off that way. The joy is, if it's a nice and neat, you're not going to see, it's nice and tightly wound, I should say, then you'll see. So there you go. So you just want it to look like that, really. And we spoke last session about crisscrossing over if you so wished. You could add beads to it. There are a million different things you could try. And at this point, there's no real kind of loss. Like if it goes wrong, doesn't really matter. You're only covering this bit. You could do whatever you like with it. So you'll do that all the way round, however you so wish. If you wanted to add your hanger, so your hangy bit here, I would recommend we wait to the end to do that. So as I've been weaving this one, what I've noticed is because I've already added this bit, which is the bit that's going to hang it up, it keeps getting caught in the spider web, which is very annoying. So I would recommend just wrapping your wool and leaving this bit till the end. So we've wrapped our tapestry wheel. The next bit is the exciting bit, which is the spider web bit. Now, I would recommend using quite a thin yarn for this, or a string or a cotton, something like that. It needs to be able to withstand quite a bit of bending because you're going to be pulling wool in and out of it. So if it's like a thin cotton, that could snap. So I would recommend a thinner wool, or yarn. So I've got this stuff. I don't really know what it is, to be honest. I don't know what you'd call it, but it's quite tough and it's a bit thick, but not quite as thick as normal wool. So you want something in between, anything like that. And now we're going to create this bit. Doesn't matter what colour you use, it's mainly going to be covered. You're really not going to see it, so it doesn't really matter. So I've got one, here's one I made earlier. So I've got a wrapped up wheel. I've also put the hanger on it, silly me. So that's going to be interesting. I mean, we might weave, maybe we'll weave the one I've already done, hey? So I'm going to get this yarn, try and find the end, try not to get tangled. So a lot of this is about not getting tangled up. So I've got a few tips. but not loads. We will get tangled, it's fine. So your best bet is just to, hopefully you can see this, we're just going to tie this nice and tightly in a knot. The only reason I'm doing it at this end is so I've sort of got a point of reference, the top, but actually you can kind of do it by eye, it's fine. And we're going to tie it in a knot, whoop, like so. Now, this is the fun bit. So we're going to try, we're aiming to get it right down the middle, like so. And then once we've gone round, we're going to move it across a little bit. So you're creating that first segment. And you're going to keep doing that. You're kind of creating a bit of a cat's cradle. And you're going to go all the way round. Now at this point, it looks like it couldn't possibly be a lovely symmetrical spider web, but I promise that it will. So you're going to keep going, and you just want each segment to be about the same width apart, because then you'll get a nice central spider web. I'm going to keep calling it a spider web because I'm not sure what else to call it really. And you're thinking, oh, how is this this doesn't look central. It's like what were those things called we did as kids? Is it a spirograph? It's a little bit like that. Oh, I used to love spirographs. They were great fun. Okay, sorry, I'm just unraveling my yarn, so I've got enough to go. And you can kind of play it by ear. So this one is probably going to be my last one. There you go. Now I know this looks like crazy, but don't worry. So what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to hold on underneath this to keep it taut, and then I'm going to cut a length underneath it, so I've got enough to wrap it around. Yeah. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of feed it, I guess, through the opposite piece, and then as I pull, you will see it will all become central. Isn't that amazing? And then I'm going to wrap it through another random one, it doesn't matter which, and keep pulling. And as I go through all these holes, it just ensures that that centerpiece is nice and tight and nice and obvious. Oh, it's like magic. And every time I do this, every single time I do this, I have this horrible thought when I get to the end that it's not going to work, and that when I tighten it, it's not going to be in the center and it's not going to make any sense, and the spirograph was not right, but it always works. So that's quite lovely, quite like it. So I'll wrap that around a few times just to make sure you've got a lovely centerpiece, and then you can tie it against itself. So this is the bit I'm going to struggle with because I've got terrible dexterity today, a bit shaky, a bit coldy. Caught another one of the children's school flus, I think, because they all get them at this time of year. Although my children seem absolutely fine, and it's just me that's complaining on the sofa. So once I've tied that off, I might do it one more time just for look, because I always seem to do that. I could just go round one. Hopefully you can see that through my shakiness. There we go. And that's nice and tight. I'm going to just cut this off here, and then I can show you how tight it is. So it's like quite, I'm just trying to show you the sort of tightness of it. It's quite taut. I think that's the right word, isn't it? It's not got much give in it, but it's sort of bouncy. Looks like a bicycle wheel. Okay, so now we've done that bit. That was the difficult bit, and now we can crack on with the weaving, which is very exciting. So at this point, I'm going to start talking about different yarns that you can use and different ways in which you can use them. I've got, as you might be able to see here, I've got a pile of loads of different wool and yarn and string. So this is the really fun bit, because you get to choose your colours, and you don't have to choose your colours straight away. You can choose them as you're working and just add new colours in. The main thing here, the reason I like doing this is because you don't need loads and loads of yarn, so you can use scraps. So if you are not a knitter like me, you're not a knitter or a crocheter, then you could steal scraps off someone who is. So if you've got like a family member or a friend who is an avid knitter, then they're probably going to collect loads of sort of odds of string and yarn, and the idea is that you're using all of those bits. And the main thing here is that we use lots of different textures and thicknesses, because it just gives your final piece extra sort of depth. So you'll be able to see in this one that you've got sort of different thicknesses of wool, and you can use varying different ones throughout, and it just adds to it. If you were to use the same thickness of wool throughout, so say you used this thickness of wool but in lots of different colours, it would still look lovely, but it wouldn't have as much texture. So that's why I've got all these different ones here. So I've got super thick ones, I've got these really fluffy ones. This one is like, it's like t-shirt material. It's like strands of like stretchy cotton, which is quite exciting. And these have all come from varying different places. So a lot of these, my grandma's given them to me because she's sort of knitted a jumper and it's the leftover wool. Some of them have been from random shops or like in charity shops where they've been on sale. I never want to spend tons and tons of money on these things. I either want to use hand-me-downs, recycled pieces, or ones that I found secondhand or incredibly cheap or on offer. So I don't want you to feel like you have to go out and buy all these different coloured yarns that are really expensive. I have spent little to no money on all of these. So as you can see, we've got lots of different textures and sizes. And the main point here is that you're organised in your, how would I say it, in your sort of storage of your wool, because I'm not going to use this big ball and pull it through the spider web of the wheel, because it would just take ages. So what I've done here, hopefully you can see, so now at this point I can shift all this out of the way. Try to put it somewhere where it's not going to annoy me. And you will see that I have sort of created a sort of palette of all the different yarns I've chosen, and I've just cut a small amount off. And that way it's very easy for it to weave. It's not going to get tangled, and you're not going to get very annoyed. The other thing as well is that you don't need to worry about how much of this you use. Like if you don't have enough of it, it's really, really easy to just tie it off and then put some more on and no one will see. So all of the tying stuff, all the tying off bit, that all happens at the back and no one sees it. So if you've not cut enough of this, it's fine. We just carry on with the same colour with another bit of wool. It's fine. So I've cut out a few of these, and then at this point we can kind of consider where we're going to start and what colours we're going to use. I will often just do it as I go because I don't want to prepare it, because the fun bit is choosing each colour as you go. The only thing I would say is that I would start with the thinnest one that you have. So that's why I've got this lovely golden string, which I bought because I had to do up a rocking horse for Christmas, because that's what was required of me from my child. So this is left over from that. So something like this is perfect because it's like glittery and shiny, so it's going to really stand out against all the other wool, but also it's very thin. So that's what I'm going to start with. I'm just trying to decide which one I should, just wondering if I should weave my yellow one because it hasn't got the string on it. Let's weave the yellow one. Okay, so we're going to start really, really simple. We're going to get our first piece of string and we're going to tie it essentially right in the center. So hopefully you can see, like, I'm tying it as close to that middle knot as possible. So, and because look, I've cut some off and I've not got the whole ball of wool, it's not going to get too stressful. So I'm going to tie that off and then I'll show you. Do it in a knot. And now if we remember where we tied this knot, then this bit here is the back and this will be the front. So we've tied that and you can barely see it, and that's kind of what you want. You want it right in the center. I'm going to see if you can see it. It's just there, look, that gold bit there. And this is where we can start weaving, which is the fun bit. So there's a few different ways you can weave, but the first way we're going to do is the simplest, which is in and out. So we've started on this one, so we're going to go underneath this one and over this one. And this is why I'm not using the whole wool, is because I want to be able to go in. Now, this is going to be quite difficult for you to see, so I'm going to try and do this quite quickly so that we can get into the big stuff so it's easy to see. But the point here is that we really tighten it to the center so that it's completely, you're really weaving into the spider web so that you don't really see the spider web afterwards. Oops, sorry, just bashed my camera as I was weaving. Now, if you go under 2 and then over 1 by accident, again, don't worry too much. No one will notice. As long as you keep this nice and tight, don't worry at all. I'm going to keep going with this. Now, what I would say at this point, we're nearly all the way around. So it's okay if you accidentally skip a couple, but the reason I'm pointing this out is because when you get all the way round, that skipping bit will become quite useful because it's a choice you'll be able to make. So I'm just trying to get through this bit so that it becomes obvious that it looks wonderful, I promise. We're going to have to go through this a few times. So this this golden one, I'm going to weave around the circle. So this will be quicker because you're weaving a very small circle because it's right in the center. And I'm just going to reiterate why this is much easier than using a whole ball of wool, because you're not having to go, having to push all of it through the wool. I've just got a small strand. You could probably be better at this than me. I'm just throwing it through basically. And I'm going to keep going around like this, and you can keep going around like this as long as you want. But at some point, probably when I go into the next colour, I'll show you the importance of skipping a spider web. Spider web, I don't know what to call them. Segment. Skipping a segment. Now at this point, you're thinking, oh, I can't even tell what's going on. But this is the sort of foundation, and it will make a difference. That if you're neat and tight with this bit, it will really pop at the end. So, bash the camera again. I'm so sorry. So, and now I'm going to talk to you about skipping a segment. Hopefully you can see this well enough to tell. But that gold is so hard to see. So because I've been going under and over, and I've just kept going under and over, what happens is every single one that you go under stays the same. So this one is an under, this one's an under, this one's an under, this one's an, every other one is an under. And what that means is the gold yarn isn't being shown on those under ones because it's going underneath the segment. So you need to kind of purposely skip a segment so that the next time you go round, all of your under ones are now over ones. I hope that makes sense. I will try to show you. So I'm going to go under here, and then hopefully it'll become clear, although it's not, it's quite hard to see this gold one. I thought it'd be a good one, but it's not. So now what I would do is I would go over this one and under this one. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over both of them, and then you kind of recreate the pattern then. So the pattern is now opposite, because the one you would have gone over, you're now going under, which means that next time you go round, all of those ones that you were sort of couldn't see because they were going under are now over. And I want you to remember that, because you can use this to your advantage. I will stop bashing the camera. I'm so sorry. It's because I'm left-handed. And well, I don't know why that's an excuse. It's not an excuse, is it, that I'm left-handed? So hopefully now, if I can weave this bit real quick, you'll be able to see that you can kind of see the gold now more than you would have if you'd have just carried on. And this wool that I've used to make this spider web is quite thick in comparison to the one that I showed you, which is perhaps why you can't see the gold quite as well. So that's definitely something to consider, is the thinness of the string you use for the segments, because the gold is sort of quite hard to see. I mean, it will still look great. It looks, but I think it looks better in real life than on camera, because the light's not picking the gold up very well. We'll use a nice contrasting colour in a minute. So I'm going to go around this a few times, and you kind of want, the reason we've skipped that segment is so you've got a nice strong first section and it's all holding itself into place. And you could go through a few times, and I'm tightening it as I go and making sure it's very tight. Now at this point I'm just going to finish this gold bit, and then I'm going to show you a tool that I have, which I'm not using because I don't want you to feel like you have to go out and buy this tool, but if you do have them, then they're quite useful. Okay, I'm probably going to stop in a second and go on to my next colour, just because I would probably go around this a few more times if I wasn't showing you guys, but for time reasons I don't want you to just have to sit and watch me do this for ages. So I'll just go round. So what you can do is you can go round and you can work out where that knot is, exactly which string it's on, and make sure that you've gone around the exact amount of times you want. At this point it doesn't matter too much because you're not going to be able to tell because it's so small and tight. But for the bigger pieces, when you get further out, it's a bit more obvious where you stop and it's easier to tie it off. Okay, I'm done with the gold. I think we've about done now. I've skipped 2 on purpose there just to sort of level it out again, to mix it up. Okay, I think we're about there. Okay, I think I'm going to go over this one and then I tie it off. So I've turned it over. Oh, you can see where the knot is. It's over this side. So I should probably, maybe I should go, if I can do it really quickly, then I can get back to that knot. I've got such shaky hands today. So weak. Got such weak hands. Okay, I'd say we're about there now. So all the way through there and through there. So I'm doing this at the front, but actually you don't need to weave it from the front. You can weave it from the back if you want. But now we're back to the beginning where that little tie was, and literally you just tie it up in a knot like so. That's all you need to do. You don't have to cut it off if you don't want to. I think I would like to cut it off because then I don't need to worry about these ends getting in the way. So I would then chop those off. Bob. And there is your first section. I know you can't tell, the gold is not popping as much as I'd like it to, but you've got that nice solid circle. It's nice and neat because you've pulled it really tight, and you've got your in and out that you've changed throughout. So you've skipped a segment so that half of them are in and half of them are out, and then swapped around, which gives you that lovely sort of pattern. And this is why I want to talk about the segment thing, because you've created a pattern by changing which ones you go over and under. And if you don't change it, then that also creates its own pattern, because the whole section will have under and over in exactly the same bits. Hopefully that makes sense, but I will show you. Point of that. Sorry, I just disappeared then, my wheel disappeared. The main point of that is that it's nice and tight and it's creating that lovely centerpiece. So that's the bit you need to be tightest with. The rest you can be a bit more loose with and not worry so much. So now we're going to go with the next colour. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go with quite a thick one so that I can show you how different that looks. So I think I'm going to go with this lovely purple that's kind of got all different colours in it. And what I'm going to try to do this time is I'm going to try and keep it in a ball, because when you hold it in a ball it's much easier to weave. So we'll see what we can do. So I'm going to turn it over and I'm going to pick at random. You don't need to choose, it doesn't need to be the same segment every time. Wherever you want it to go, doesn't matter. You just tie it off and we'll crack on with some weaving. So I'm going to do this one the same as I did the gold, and I'm just going to do the in and out. But hopefully you'll see quite quickly that it's because it's a much thicker wool, and also critically it's a thicker wool that has different sort of thicknesses within it. So you can see some bits are thick and some bits are thin. Those yarns give a lovely texture in this weaving. So now I'm holding on to this. It's quite hard to do with that gold string. This purple one here is much more easy to hold, and it's much easier to weave. Can you see how much quicker I'm doing? I'm just going in and out, in and out, in and out. And I'm just, this is why we're not using the whole ball of wool, because this would be impossible otherwise, right? And it does see it like it looks quite, does it look messy what I'm doing? I'm not sure. I don't know if it looks like I'm just throwing it through, but because I can hold on to this whole ball of wool, it just makes this easier. Now, you've probably noticed I've already gone round once, and I've just carried on weaving in and out, in and out. And I'm going to do that for a little while because I want this segment to be a bit bigger than the gold, but I will skip a segment at some point just to sort of even it out. And I'm tightening as I go. I'm sort of going in, out in one motion, in, out. And hopefully you can see that's looking good. Oh, it's already starting to come together. I'm very pleased. And this is also, hopefully you can see that it's so much quicker. It's a bit less scary now. Right, so I think at this point I'm going to skip a segment. So I'm going to go over these two and then under the next one to make sure that you've switched it up, right? So I've gone over these two, and now I go under this one. You can see the effect it's had because this is now covering this one and this one isn't. And what happens is you'll get really quick at this, and you'll realize that you'll be doing you'll get into a groove, you'll get into it, and then you'll realize you've skipped a segment by accident, but it's always a happy accident because it never looks rubbish. I think the only time it doesn't look quite so good is when you don't skip a segment for every single piece of wool. So you want that randomness in there. You want to change it up a bit. And in fact, we're going to change it up again in a second because we're going to do a different technique next. I just want to go around this a few times just to create a nice big section of lovely purple or whatever it is. I think, did I go inadvertently? Yeah, I've skipped a segment look again without realizing, but that's good. That's a good thing. When we accidentally skip segments, it makes that nice randomness. Now, every so often, you might have to just check that your little section of wool isn't getting too tangled, because that's very annoying when that happens, but it will happen. It's just much less tangly than if you were using a whole ball of wool and trying to shove it through each segment. This is much quicker, as you can see. The tools, that's what I was going to tell you about. I have one of these. So I think this is a child's one. I think you can get much less plasticky ones. So this is a weaving tool. So you use these in when like rug making and things like that, where it's like a frame with your string going down, and you use this to weave in and out. These are really useful for these wheels, but I understand that most people don't have these. I don't know why I have this. So it's quite a surprise that this even exists in my house, because I don't recall ever weaving anything but this. I think someone bought me a frame once, like a kid's one. Never used it, but this is what this is. You can get them. They're weaving tools. I'm not even sure what they're called, but essentially you tie the string to this bit, and then you use this to weave in and out of your piece. It does make it slightly easier, but actually it's really I don't think there's much difference in it. I'm not using it now because I don't think I need to, especially if you've been prepared and you sort of you cut your wool into little sections first. I'm just not sure if it's absolutely necessary. If you have one, then maybe try it and see if you think it's easier. But if you don't have one, then don't feel like you need to go out and get one, because you definitely don't. Okay, so Where's the end of that? Not sure. Okay, so that's a nice big section. I'm happy with that. I don't know where the end of it is, so I'm just going to tie it off against itself. Quite happy to do that. So I'm going to give myself a nice big bit here, and then I'm going to tie it carefully against itself. Make sure that this bit is nice and tight so that it's not sticking out. And I've made sure I've tied it against the back bit. If you don't, not the end of the world, you can cover it with your next section. Done. So now we've done our second colour. That's looking good. So the next thing I want to do is a different technique altogether. So for this one, I think we'll use a thicker wool. I think it looks better with a thicker wool. And essentially we're going to create this sort of like spiral effect that you can see on this lime green here. It's very, very easy. I would argue it's probably easier than the in and out. Which one should we go for? I think I might go for this lovely dark red. I think we'll go with this sort of reddy pink. Okay, I'm going to turn it over. I'm going to choose a new section. Doesn't matter where. I'm going to tie it up. And now I'm going to leave that bit so that I don't forget. Now, this is really, really easy. You're going to have your yarn pointing upwards. You're going to go into the next segment and then come out of the segment before it, like so. So I'll do that again on the next one. So you go over down here and then up through the one before it. And then you're creating this sort of loopy effect. Over to the next one, up through the back of it and round. Now the joy of this one is you can decide how loose it is. You could do it really, really tightly, or you could do it quite loose, which adds a bit more depth to it. And I'm going to keep going. I'm going to go all the way around, and you can kind of decide as you go. So we go ahead one, back up the other side, ahead one, and then back up through the other side. Hopefully you can see that quite. Hopefully that's making sense. So I'm going to try and look at the camera as I do it so I can see it. But that's going to be interesting because I can't see my hands. So I'm going to go through the one ahead and then back up behind it. Yes, I hope that makes sense. So we're going to go down through this next one and then back up through the one before it. Doesn't help that I'm just smushing it through with a fistful of wool, but hopefully you can see what a lovely effect it makes. It's that kind of like spiraled effect. Now I know I'm saying this and I know I'm going to regret it because I'm not going to be able to remember how to do it, but if we do this way all the way round, I'm fairly confident. I'm not fairly confident at all. I'm not confident in what I'm saying at all. I've done it before, but I've forgotten how to do it. But essentially, if we do this all the way round, and then do we go back in the opposite direction? I can't remember. We'll try. But if you do the same thing again, the next way round, but the opposite direction, it kind of has a plaited effect. We'll have a go, shall we? And if it doesn't work out, it's not going to look bad because it's just going to be another one of these. So I'll try and remember how we do that. Because I remember doing it once and being like, wow, that's amazing. And then never being able to get it again. So we'll see. That's the end bit, which I'm just going to pull back through so it's not in the way. So we're getting towards the end of our first circle. And you can see that I'm obviously not pulling as tight because I quite like the sort of loose effect of the spiral. Right, now this is the moment of truth. Do we then go, I'm going to go over one again, back up, and then I'm wondering if we go this way. Let's see what happens. I'm going to go back in the opposite direction. Oh, I don't know if this has worked. But this is the joy of this. You can have a play and it doesn't affect the overall piece. It still looks great. Yeah, I think that's how you do it. I think I've done it. So once you've done a full circle, you essentially go back in the opposite direction. Try not to get your wool tangled like I just did. And then if you make sure you put it in the right direction, you get a plaited effect. Yay! Oh, I'm so pleased. So we'll call this the spiral weave. So if you go all the way around a spiral weave and then go back on yourself all the way around, you should get a lovely plaited effect. So can you see? It's like, yeah, looks good, doesn't it? Quite happy with that. So I'm going to go all the way around again. So I'll just reiterate how we do this spiral weave. We go over the next segment, get tangled, and then back up through the one behind it. Nice. Very happy with this. So I will attempt to get all the way round fairly quickly. If I now do this fairly quickly, so it's not like watching paint dry. Hopefully it's not like watching paint dry. It's a bit more interesting than that. But hopefully you should at least feel like it's something that you could quite easily do and it not be too difficult, because that's why I like doing this, because it makes me feel like, oh, maybe I can work with yarn and wool. I'm always asking my mum to crochet things for me because she's very good at it. And I asked her quite recently to crochet me not like a balaclava, like an open face balaclava, but with crochet squares. So it's like you wear it as like a snood, but it's got a hood as well. They're quite fashionable at the minute, but they're super, super expensive for some reason. And they're just made out of crochet squares. And she was like, no, I'm not making that. It's awful. It's hideous. She thought it was terrible. And then she showed her friend at work pictures of what I wanted. And the next day she came in and she made me one. So I've got this crochet squared sort of snoody hood thing, which is amazing. And blows my mind. She just did it in one evening. And I can't even make one square. But at least with this, I feel like I'm succeeding at something. Okay, so I've got all the way round again. So I'm just going to go through that one, turn it over. And because I've remembered to leave myself a little bit of yarn, I can just snip a little bit off there and then tie it off in a knot. And then I can cut those excess bits off. Okay, so now I'll do a nice little close-up so we can see where we've got our little plaited effect. Oh, this is looking good. I'm really happy with this. So glad I worked out the plait whilst live. I really didn't think that was going to work. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to carry on with the in and out weave, but this time we're going to stick to the in and out, and we're not going to skip a segment, and we'll see what happens. And for this one, I think I'm going to try this t-shirty one. I mean, I don't know if there's enough yarn to do it, but we'll try it because it's nice and thick, and hopefully you'll be able to see what I mean about deciding to not skip segments. So again, we're going to just choose a random. I think the reason that I choose a random segment to tie off each time is because if we were to sort of tie it off at the same segment, it might be noticeable. I don't think it would be, but I just figured if I tie it from a different place each time, it makes it more random then, right? Okay, so I've tied it off here, so I'm going to come up here and hopefully, do you know what? I'm just going to wrap this up again because Rosie's getting tangled again, as usual. So look, I'm just wrapping it around my fingers, just in a bid to make it a bit neater. Okay, so we're going to go over and under, and I'm going to try and do this super quickly. And because this is a nice thick yarn, hopefully this will make more sense. And I'm just going over and under in sort of one motion. Over and under, over and under, over and under, and I'm going to keep going. Now, at this point, I'd just like to say that I don't know for sure because I'm terrible at maths, But if you were to, so these segments, when we did it quite randomly, and we just sort of chose a sort of maybe 2 centimetre gap. I think, so if I count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So there's 18 segment lines, if you will. I'm fairly sure that if you made the number of segments an odd number, then when you go in and out, you might not have the same problem. I don't know if that's true because I'm really not great at maths, but it's just something to ponder if you care. I mean, I don't think it matters because you figure it out as you go, but I just wonder if the sort of skipping a segment thing wouldn't be an issue if you had an odd number of segments. I don't know. I've opened a can of worms, haven't I? I'm going to stop talking about that. Okay, I've got back to the beginning, so I'm just going to carry on. I'm going to carry on going over and under so that they're going over and under the same ones each time. And already we've got a lovely tangled up ball, but luckily this is quite thick stuff, so it doesn't tangle quite so badly. And I'm going to just go around a few times so that you can see what happens. I think I've gone round twice, so I'll go round 3 times. Ba, 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 ba. Now, hopefully you can sort of see already what's happening is that because we've chosen to keep the segments exactly the same, you've got this sort of lumpy effect. So it's like, it's very obvious that everything's gone in and out in the same way. Whereas when you skip a segment, it kind of adds to the randomness of it. But I quite like to do a mixture of the two. I think that works nicely. So, we are on nearly 20 past. So let's see how much of this we can do. I do want to show you this of a few different bits and bobs. Okay. How far are we? Got about half a circle left. Oh, hang on, what have I done? Oh, I nearly skipped a segment by accident then. Ooh. Okay, nearly there. Nearly there. I think it's there, isn't it? There it is. Okay, so we've gone around 3 times, and now you can see what happens when you don't skip a segment. It is very obvious, it's very uniform, but I think in amongst some randomness that works quite nicely, right? So I'm going to turn that over and tie that off, and then we'll choose our next colour, and we'll do another, I think we'll probably do another random weave. We'll do a weave in and out, but where we skip a segment, and then I'll show you a few extra bits before I go. So, I mean, although we're probably not going to finish this exact one, and I've been ranting quite a lot, I'm already sort of, nearly halfway done, which is quite good considering. So it can be fairly quick if you get used to it. So what shall we do next? What colour? I'm thinking I quite like this fairy one. So maybe if we do the fairy one and we'll do a random in and out, see what happens, and then I'll show you how to do the tassels at the end, and also talk to you about asymmetry as well very quickly. Okay, so we're going to go in and out as we were. This one's going to be a bit more tricky because it's all fluffy. I love this. It's like candy floss, but lilac. I've got loads of this stuff. This is another hand-me-down from my grandma. I don't know what she was making with it. I certainly didn't see any jumpers of this in this description. I would have, yeah, quite like a jumper like this. Looks very cozy. Okay, and as you can see again, because I'm not having to think about it too much, I'm just very very quickly. So I've already gone round once. I'm going to keep going till about halfway, and then I'll skip a segment. And then I'll do that maybe every 1.5 goes round, I guess, something like that. So I'm going to skip a segment now. So I've gone through this one, and I'm going to come up through this one, and then back in, doing it nice and quickly. I quite like this fluffy one right next to the cotton because it's totally changes the texture and the feel. And hopefully you can see as well that I've been making, you know, conscious decisions about what colours I'm using and where the colours are going, and that there's a colour range, you know, there's a palette, there's a colour palette there I've sort of thought about. You could do this in rainbow colours, you could do this in rainbow order if you wanted. You know, it doesn't really matter, whatever colours you like. I'm going to skip a segment again now. So I've gone over 2, and I'm just going to keep going for a little while, just so we get the idea. And you can see I'm really getting into the swing of it now, like it's getting easier to go in and out, probably because you don't have to be as tight and the segments are getting a bit bigger because it's not right in the centre. Okay. I'm not going to do this one for much longer because I don't want to miss the good stuff. So I'm going to probably go around one more time. I'm going to skip a segment one more time, and then we'll go over and under. I love this little fluffy bit. It's great. So where's the back? Where's the beginning? Where's the end? I don't know. It's too fluffy for me to see, so I will just tie this off against itself. I think that's probably enough of the fairy stuff, right? That looks nice. So I'll just go through one more. Because I can't find the end, I'm just going to tie it off against itself. So I'll give myself enough space to do so. Loop it through. Pull it out a little bit so I can tie it against itself. Make sure this one's a bit tighter. Lovely. And then chop that off there. Also, I'm going to chop this guy off because it's annoying me. There we go. Okay, so that's looking good. So we've got the in and out weave where we skip segments to get the randomness going. This is the in and out weave with no skipping so that you get the same uniform every time. And then we've got the loop weave, which I might do one more time, in fact. Have I got time? I'll show you a few bits first, and if I have time, I'll do another one. So the thing I want to quickly talk to you about is a bit of asymmetry. So this one that I was doing, I don't have any more of this. So this friend gave me some of this. So you can get very, very thick, almost like wool before it's been turned into string, right? And the point of this is that I've purposely chosen to add bits in and only done certain areas. So you've got that asymmetry. So there's a few things you can do, but essentially you're just knotting. So that is an option. So I'm going to show you on here very quickly how you might do that. I don't really know. I don't have like a system other than I just go for it, right? So if I get like this one again, for example, because I've got like a little bit left, all you need to do, so the reason I'm showing you this is just that like adding the asymmetry doesn't make it harder. You can quite easily add a bit of knotting in and then carry on going on your merry way and just tightening it around itself. It's not like it doesn't add an extra sort of element of skill to the weaving. You're just sort of adding extra bits. You could do it afterwards if you wanted, so you could fill the whole circle and then go in and knot some things through. It's just like an added extra bit if you want to. And so like for things like this, all I've essentially done is tied it in a knot, and then it's really just like going for it really. So you might loop it up and then tie it in a knot. I'm going to make a struggling with that. So I'm just tying a knot like that, so you can see it's just like flapping, and then you might go over to the next segment, pull it tight, and then do the same thing. So I'm just creating a loop, and you're really just making a mess. Essentially, you're just making a mess of loads of knots. You're just tangling it together, and then you might tie that in a knot. And if you've got like super thick wool like this, that's really easy to do because you just go in and out a few times. But if you've only got this sort of stuff, you're essentially just making a series of knots and just getting them to stick out in a sort of interesting way, and just doing that a few times around and around. You could even, if you wanted, if you had the time, you could plait some thick wool, and then once you've plaited it, you could knot that into it. But essentially you're just imagine you're sort of scrunching it together, knotting it, and then just sticking it in. And that's kind of what you're doing. You're just doing a series of knots. You can be really experimental with it. You don't need to, there's not a certain way of doing it. It's just, I've just had a go at like adding some extra bits in there. So I just wanted to let you guys know that if you wanted to try that, it's not a special thing. It's just adding some knots, just making it a mess, but then kind of weaving it in such a way that it kind of looks like it's supposed to be there. So that's another option if you want to add some asymmetry. It's not a thing, it's just knotting stuff around. And then all you do, so you've got that knot there, and then you might get a piece of yarn and just do your in and out weave all the way around, but you just tighten it against it, like, because the yarn is quite thin, you can sit it underneath and it's not going to leave gaps. So it's really easy. So have an experiment with that if you wish. The last thing I'm going to show you, so I'm going to go back to the one that was nearly finished because this is a great time to show you this. So this one, you've got maybe 1 centimetre left of weaving to do. At this point, if you want tassels, this would be the time to do it so that you're not having to like get annoyed by all the yarn. So I would do my tassels at this point, and then I'd perhaps just add one or two more circles of yarn just to finish it off. So I'm going to show you very quickly tassels. They're very easy. So what colour tassels shall we do? I'm thinking maybe this light green goes quite nicely, or maybe the red that we were using. Maybe both. Let's do both. So I'll use these excess pieces first, but I have got my big yarn, big balls over here if I need to use those. So essentially all you need to do is decide how long you want your tassels to be. So let's say we want it to be about there. So if you want it that length, you need to double it. Yeah, so that's how long the wool is. And then you would chop it there. And that's how you would have it in half like that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull it open like this. And I'm going to just measure out a few so that I can make a few tassels that are exactly the same length. I would also point out at this point that you can add other things to the bottom of your weaving. You could add, I've got some with pine cones on them, or feathers, just things like that you might want to add that you found in the garden, just to give it a bit of extra. I mean, you don't have to do any of those things if you don't want. I've made a right mess of this. I've made a knot. Okay, right. So if I just I'm going to cut 4 of them, and then I'm going to cut 4 of the green. I'll show you how to add the tassels, and then I will let you all go and have your lunch and have a go at this afternoon, hopefully. If you do have a go at this, I'd love to see your pictures. I'd love to see how you get on. So please feel free to show me. My business is called Rosie and Ramona, so you can always find me there, or if you comment on this video on Facebook with your pictures, then I should be able to see them. Whoop. So I've got 4 of them and 4 of the red, and then essentially all we do is we fold the yarn in half, and you can either go over or under. So I think I'm going to go over, so I'm going to choose where will I go. I'll go in the middle. You poke that through, and then you have your loop here, and then you pull the 2 pieces of yarn through the loop, and there's your tassel. It's as simple as that. So if I do a green one for you, fold it in half, and then we're going to go over, so through the segment, poke it out the other side, so you've got your loop here, and then push your two ends through. You can obviously make it look better than I am, because I am making a right hash of it, and then tighten, and then you can just tighten them both like so, and then you would just go along. If I do a couple more now, and then I shall leave you to it, go through, and you can do that as much as you want. And then what you can do with your tassels is you can either leave them at the length you've got, or you could trim them so they're the same length, or you could trim them so that they're a certain angle, so they're like pointy, whatever you like. And then once you've done that, you can finish off your weaving, and then you're done. Finito. And then you can hang that up and it look absolutely beautiful. Okay, we're done. I think we're done. I hope you enjoyed our weaving session. That was really fun. And I hope you'll have a go. It is really easy. I know I made it look super fiddly because I was all over the place and tangling it up. But it is, once you get into the groove of it, it is really fun and like mindful. So I hope you all enjoyed yourselves. Thank you so much for coming. I will be back soon in February with more crafts. I've been Rosie. My business is Rosie and Ramona. And I hope you'll have a wonderful weekend. And I'll see you all soon. Goodbye.